Okay, Dan Leathery is our first speaker this morning. Dan came to Columbus Academy in first grade. He lives in Gahanna. He has a younger sister, Anna, who's a ninth grader, a brother, Tim, who's an eighth grader, and his father graduated from the school in the class of 1984. Dan.
When people ask me why I'm a Buckeye fan, I think, why not be a Buckeye fan? I don't know how to answer this question because I was raised to be one. My dad took no chances in leading me to Buckeye fanhood. As a child, I watched almost every Ohio State game, learning bits and pieces along the way. My friends and I often practiced the cheer when the grown-ups cheer tactic in order to give off the impression that we were just as dedicated as they were. I may have faked it as a kid, but after the first home game I went to, I was hooked. It was 10 hours of exposure to the Buckeye culture. It was exciting, fun, colorful, and crowded. I was only 8 years old at the time. We were playing Texas Tech. We tailgated for 3 hours before the game. The atmosphere was amazing. Everyone was friendly, people were playing music, and there was tons of food and candy to eat. That alone was worth the trip. Then I saw the team walk into the stadium. These guys were huge, like superheroes, and I was about 10 feet away. I can't think of a full day when I was more engaged than I was on that day. Everything drew my attention. The stadium was filled with a sea of more people than I had ever seen before, all wearing scarlet and gray. The band playing while performing Script Ohio, fans cheering, not to mention the game itself, all of it was so impressive. My 8-year-old self couldn't get enough of it. The Buckeyes won this game easily, leading to plenty of cheering, and everyone was in a good mood after the game, meaning more time to tailgate. The Buckeyes began winning close games that season. Some fans were frustrated with the fact that they couldn't seem to blow anyone out, but I didn't know any better. To me, the closer the game was, the more exciting it was. When Ohio State played Purdue that year, it was one of the most memorable wins of the season. Craig Krenzel threw a 36-yard touchdown pass to Michael Jenkins, trailing 3-6 on 4th and 1 with just a minute and 36 seconds left to play. This was a desperation play by the Buckeyes. With so many close games having gone our way already, there was no way this too could work out. But we took a gamble on a long shot play, and it paid off. Games like this only drew me closer to the Bucs. They were an exciting team to watch, and the more games they won, the more interested I became. After 13 sloppy but hard-fought victories that season, Ohio State was still undefeated going into the final game of the year. They were set to face the defending national champion Miami Hurricanes, led by fearless kick holder Matt Carter. No one expected them to win this game. They were 13.5-point underdogs. My family happened to be in Mexico at the time of the game, but my father and his friends showed their determination by convincing one of the hotel managers to show the game in their most popular hangout room. After a close first half, we decided to change rooms because there were many Miami fans and they were getting a little rowdy. So we relocated and went back to our room to watch on our tiny television in the corner of the bedroom. The game was broadcast in Spanish, so it was a little difficult to follow. After 2 overtimes and one controversially late pass interference flag, the Buckeyes pulled off one of the greatest upsets of all time to become national champions for the first time in 35 years. This is where I became locked in as an Ohio State fan. At the time, I didn't realize how spoiled I really was as a sports fan. The first sports team I actually cared about and followed just happened to go undefeated and win the national championship in my first season as a true fan. I've had little patience for losing since then. True fans get superstitious about their teams. We all know that a lot of sports success is luck, which way the ball bounces. But if something can affect your luck, it's superstition. In an attempt to gain control over the Buckeyes' fate, I've fallen into rituals and superstitious habits like riding the hot streaks of certain jerseys. Poor performances by the Buckeyes can sometimes mean the end for whatever jersey I was wearing at the time. For example, I had a streak with white jerseys last season. I wore them for every game after the USC loss, and it was working pretty well. 4 good wins, and the Buckeyes were first in the Big Ten. Ohio State went into West Lafayette, overlooking Purdue, and eventually lost the game. I haven't put on a white jersey since. I bought a new red jersey at the end of last season. The jersey is now 6-0, including wins over Oregon in the Rose Bowl and the 12th-ranked Miami Hurricanes this season. I'm still deciding the fate of my red jersey following the Buckeyes' loss to Wisconsin last weekend. Technically, I wasn't wearing the jersey at the time of the game, so in that way, it was not my jersey letting the team down, but it was my fault for not wearing it. Most of this craziness comes from my dad's influence. The Buckeyes were national champions in 1968 when he was just 2 years old. He had to wait till he was 35 years old before the Buckeyes won a championship he could remember, and by now, he thinks he's got the rituals down. He's the most devoted fan I know. He's missed 2 home Buckeye games in the past 25 years, and both were for family funerals. I've followed my dad's ritual of watching the halftime show in the basement, but everything else in the family room, and it's been a pretty successful tactic over my 9-year run as a true fan. If your team isn't thriving quite as well as you want them to, I may have the solution for you. After all, it's partially the true fan's fault when our team loses. First, be sure to set your priorities about where you like to watch the game. Keep in mind that sometimes being uncomfortable for a few hours is probably worth locking down the W. I don't care if you're sitting on a stool in the cold garage, you can't mess with the mojo. Secondly, if your team is in the process of a potential comeback, don't leave that seat no matter how badly you want to. Example, my mom came downstairs at halftime of the Ohio State-Tennessee NCAA tournament basketball game in 2007. At the time, the Buckeyes were losing by 20 points. She was simply planning on saying goodnight, but when she sat down, the Buckeyes started hitting shots. She tried to get up, but we wouldn't let her leave. The Buckeyes were playing possess, and it became clear that it had something to do with my mom's seat choice. When you feel the tides turn, don't change anything. We made her sit there until the game was won. She was exhausted, but it was a win. To be a good fan, you have to know what's working for you and what isn't. You can't lose hope at any point during the game, and you can't be afraid to mix it up and try something new if things aren't going your way, like switching seats or flipping your hat inside out. As a true fan, you're a part of the outcome, and most importantly, you have to support your team, win or lose. Some people find it odd that I care as much as I do about the Buckeyes, but I don't see it as a bad thing at all. Sure, it hurts to lose like we did last week, but the way I see it, it's much more fun to get into it and be emotionally involved in something than it is to only be a bandwagon fan. Although a loss like Wisconsin can ruin my night, or week, I get to feel part of something when the team wins. I'm glad my dad raised me to feel the way I do. He showed me how to have fun this way at a very young age, and I look forward to teaching my kids the same rituals someday. His plan all worked out, as I can confidently tell you today that I bleed scarlet and gray. Go Bucks. Thank you.
Ben Bechtel is our second speaker. Ben came to Columbus Academy, started in kindergarten, and he lives in Upper Arlington. Ben.
How much time do you feel like you waste? What do you think wasted time really is? Everyone has heard countless times how life is short and that we need to make the best of it. And after a while, it just gets really old and repetitive. The problem is, this is the truth. We really don't have that much time. So wasted time is a lot more important than most people realize. Of course, no one realistically wants to think about how short our lives really are. I mean, why would you want to think about how little time you have left? I know I wouldn't, because it certainly doesn't make you feel good. It never really feels short, though. Like a school week, some of them can drag on forever. The truth is, according to most studies, in the United States, our average life expectancy is 78 years. About how many days do you think that is? Think about it. It's 28,470 days. But since we've all lived about 16 or 17 years already, at least, take off about 6,000 days. And then a third of that because of sleep. That's about 15,000 days. 15,000. That's not a lot. I bet you all predicted a much bigger number. So what should we spend this time doing? How much time should we devote to certain things? How can you use the time you have the best? Obviously, when you're younger, your parents dictate how you spend your time, dictate and guide you how you spend your time, because you really don't know what to do with it. But as we get older, we are given more and more freedom, and we become more responsible for our time and the way we make use of it. These decisions become more and more crucial as we get older. They can vary from whether to watch TV or play Xbox, whether to study for math or to read history. The difficulty is how to balance your time with playing video games and having fun with those things, while also getting the necessary things done. It can be really tough since the main issue with schoolwork is it's just not something we choose to do. It's chosen for us. So we feel like we're forced to spend our own time doing it. This is something many kids see as a waste of time, so some kids just put it off or rush through it. Why should we have to do more homework anyway, after we've just spent 7 hours learning at school? How much time should school take? Could we accomplish more with the 7 hours we are here? The same thing goes with sports and practices. They can get very old very fast, but we all know if you want to be good at them, you have to practice a lot. So the amount of time you spend with school and sports just mainly depends on how dedicated you are at becoming the smartest or best athlete you can be. It's tough, but that's just life. As I mentioned before, a third of our day is taken up by sleep. If we want to squeeze more time out of the day, we generally lose sleep because of it. If we want to keep watching a movie, we'll stay up later. If we need to study more for a test, we'll stay up later. Or if we just want to keep talking and hang out with friends longer into the night, we'll stay up later. And sleep is probably the most important and needed thing. We need sleep to survive, particularly for us teenagers, yet we still don't use our time well for sleep. But what if we didn't need to sleep that much? What if we only had to sleep 4 hours a night instead of around 8? What would we do with all of that extra time? How would your life change if you were able to fully function for 4 more hours a day, 28 more hours a week? How much of that time would we use well, though? Would it just drag on, become more wasted time? Or would it actually benefit most of us and be used to improve our lives? But what is wasted time, actually? Is there even such a thing as wasted time? John Lennon said, "Time you enjoy wasting was not wasted." I agree with this completely because doing something you want to do or like isn't wasted time. Even if you're the only one who's enjoying it, if you're having fun, this time can't be wasted. Wasted time is when you're just flat out bored and are not having fun or not doing anything productive. Spending time on things like school isn't wasted time either because it's necessary. Or is it? People have vastly different opinions on both of these things, but truthfully, it's not even up to them, or to me for that matter, to decide. It's up to the person who the time belongs to. But when we have free time, is it wasted time, or is it a necessary break from all the work we do daily? Is it a reward for the hard work we do, or is it time wasted while we should be working towards our goals? I think free time should be used the way you want it to be. It's some of your time that is actually completely and totally yours, and surprisingly, we don't really get all that much of it. So, at least I say, free time is never wasted either, if you use it the way you really want to. When you hear how much time we really have in our lives and think about how little it really is, then we think more in depth about what free time means and if it is truly wasted or not. Everyone will always have regrets about how they spend their time, though. Whether it's not doing something and wishing you would have, spending too much time on something that ended up not mattering, or a mix of both, it will never be perfect. There are always going to be the necessary things in our lives, like school, work, and traveling from place to place, and they will take up a good amount of time. But you need to choose carefully how to spend the rest of that precious time that we call free. You can leave it all for others and do whatever you're told is important. You can work at the hard things you need to work at, like school and jobs, to become successful, or you can find a way to mix them both, so you can enjoy success and be able to gain something real while still enjoying life. Thank you.
Okay, and we finished this morning with William Westwater. William came to Columbus Academy in first grade. He lives in Gahanna, and among the family members who have graduated from the school are his brother Harrison of the class of 2000, his father of the class of 1968, and 2 grandfathers, one of the class of 1931 and one in 1927. William.
If you asked any 7-year-old if he loved his parents a little bit, he would say, no, not a little bit. I love my parents this much. But how deep is that love? Despite loving his parents with his whole heart, it is somewhat mechanical, ingrained, an immediate response. Would you say this love is different from a lifetime partner who has realized the role of that loved one over time and what that person means to them? From my experience, age makes a huge difference. On November 25th, 2000, my dad died. I went to New Albany Country Club with my dad, Mark Westwater, mom, Lisa, and our good friend, Jose. I was changing after a leisurely swim